Tyler Fisher. I'm a news apps developer on the NPR Visuals team. Look at This was a series of what we called sequential visual stories. They were photo-driven visual stories told in this sort of sequential slideshow style format, and they could incorporate other elements like audio or video, but they were primarily photo-driven. The last story we did was about the Brazilian rainforest. As with almost all the Look at This stories, I was the front-end developer. On this story in particular, I was also the data reporter and graphics developer. Anything that had numbers or maps or charts or anything in that story, I reported out as well as developed. Lulu Navarro, who's a host at NPR and was the Brazilian correspondent, wanted to do a major radio series about the Brazilian rainforest. And our senior editor at the time, Kai Maria, got wind of the project and basically convinced the reporting team to let her tag along as a photographer, with the idea that we would produce a web-first, or web-only really, visual story out of this as well. So Kai went and did all the photography and followed Lulu through all of her reporting and came back with the stories and the photos. Meanwhile, I was doing all of the data reporting, so just trying to understand deforestation in Brazil and what the future of the rainforest looked like. And when Kainaz came back, we had somewhat actually differing stories that we had reported out. Kainaz came back with this: the rainforest is dying, everything's terrible, we need to really stick it to the Brazilian government because they fucked it up. And my story was a little more like, deforestation was super bad in the 90s, but they've done a pretty good job at mitigating it. There's still, little areas, and Lulu went to one of them, but it's significantly better than it used to be. And the whole science behind it, what we lead with, you were taught in schools that the rainforest is like the lungs of the planet. It's not that simple. All the experts I talked to sort of talked about how losing the rainforest would have a different effect than people think. It's not that we wouldn't have oxygen, it's that, climate change would be made even worse. It would be hotter, it would be drier. So those things sort of like what the effects of losing the rainforest actually be, and the fact that deforestation has gone down considerably in the past decade and a half. And then the last piece I sort of found in the data reporting was every other place that was forested has the story of developed countries as deforestation. The U.S. was covered in forests in the 18th century, and now we've completely deforested. So expecting Brazil to not do the same is perhaps hypocritical. Anyway, back to the timeline. So we came back and sort of reconciled our two stories to come together to tell somewhat of a more complex picture. I can't remember how long we built the story. I would guess it was about 3 weeks. The Look at This template was established. We did make some sort of changes, like the sort of animation when you move between slides was new, and we never really integrated maps and charts in this way before, so that was new. But the basic structure and frame of how we make these stories was well established by that point, so we were able to move quickly. I think it was reconciling, like figuring out what is between what we knew from the numbers and what we knew from what we saw on the ground, like reconciling those two pretty different stories and telling one that was cohesive and made sense. I think we spent a lot of time framing this story. The website, this is probably our 15th sequential visual story. We're pretty good at them at this point. So it was a lot about just how we framed it. I do think we sort of stopped. There's a section about how a major factor in economic factor in deforestation is lumber, like actually using the trees that are cut down. And the U.S. is the biggest importer of Amazonian wood. And we really tried to find some, like a major landmark that was still using Brazilian hardwood. Like we were able to find that the Brooklyn Bridge and Coney Island Boardwalk were built with it like decades ago, and they've probably already been redone with different wood. Because there are a lot of environmental groups that try to stop places from using Brazilian hardwood, but there are certainly still places in the U.S. that do. We never really find the right place to like really nail that. I think that would have been a good. Something we kept trying to go back to, like the U.S. deforests and the U.S. uses lumber, like trying to act like we're complicit in this too. This isn't like just a Brazilian problem. I wish we could have hit that tack a little harder. I really do see myself sort of equally a developer and a journalist. I don't have any desire to do like just tech work. Like I want to do the work I do in a newsroom. I believe I do journalism through my code. As some people write and some people record audio, I write code. My developer skills are at the point where I can contribute to sort of the web product side of things when necessary. I try not to prioritize one over the other. I do see them as equal. If you're interested in, sort of development and coding for journalism, the best advice I can give if you're trying to learn code is not to necessarily just work yourself through every tutorial you can find on the internet, but to find a project you want to make, a story you want to tell, and learn what you need to learn to tell that story. And the skill, that might be, if it's a very data-heavy project and there's this data that's on a website that you want to analyze, you probably have to write a web scraper to get that data. And once you learn the skills and what you can do with web scraping, you start to see every web page as something you can scrape. And that just opens your mind to so many more stories. And as you develop those skills and learn what power you have with the ability to write code, you start to learn more and more things as you chase more stories. Something new is always going to come up. You're looking at the future yourself something else. So the possibilities just start opening more and more the more you learn. So taking a story-first approach to learning code is my best advice.